Right now, somewhere on Amazon, there's a product review that contains a confession to murder, and you've probably scrolled right past it without realizing what you were reading.
Serial killer investigation surrounding Todd Kohlhepp, another 7 News exclusive.
In 2016, investigators in South Carolina made a discovery that would crack open one of the most disturbing cases in recent American history, when they found a woman chained inside a metal shipping container on a rural property where she'd been held captive for 2 months. When police asked the property owner about the bodies buried on his land, he confessed to murders spanning more than a decade. But here's what made this case truly chilling. For years, this killer had been hiding his confessions in plain sight on Amazon in product reviews that hundreds of people had read, and some had even found helpful when making their own purchasing decisions. His name was Todd Kohlhepp, and to his clients, he was a successful real estate agent who had sold more than 100 properties. But to law enforcement, he would become known as one of South Carolina's most prolific serial killers who had been bragging about his crimes on the internet for over a decade. Todd Kohlhepp understood something that most criminals never learn, which is that the best place to hide is in plain sight, and by 2006 he had found the perfect disguise as a licensed real estate broker in South Carolina. His website featured professional photos and glowing testimonials. His listings were detailed and accurate, and clients described him as knowledgeable and efficient, the kind of person who got deals done without any drama. By all appearances, he was living the American dream with a successful business, a large property, and financial security that most people only dream about. But there were details in his background that didn't quite fit the professional image if you knew where to look. In 1987, at age 15, Kohlhepp had been convicted of kidnapping and sexual assault in Arizona after holding a 14-year-old girl at gunpoint, and the court psychiatrist's evaluation was chilling with descriptions of behavioral problems, explosive tendencies, and no regard for others. He served 14 years in prison, and during that time he wrote letters describing violent fantasies with zero remorse. Letters that would later become evidence of what was coming. After his release in 2001, he moved to South Carolina and somehow managed to obtain a real estate license despite his violent felony record, exploiting loopholes in a background check system that failed to protect the public. By 2006, he was operating his own brokerage and had purchased a 95-acre property in Woodruff that was rural and isolated, surrounded by woods and far from prying eyes. He told neighbors he wanted privacy, and nobody questioned it because successful people buy large properties all the time. And when he placed a metal shipping container on the land and told people it was for storage, nobody questioned that either. Between 2003 and 2016, Todd Kohlhepp lived 2 completely separate lives, where during business hours, he was the professional real estate agent, showing properties and closing deals. But during his personal time, he was something else entirely. He created an Amazon account, and over those 13 years, posted nearly 200 product reviews, most of which seemed completely normal, with comments about flashlights and folding shovels and padlocks. But some reviews contained details that should have raised every alarm bell imaginable, because he was confessing to murder, and thousands of people were reading his confessions without understanding what they meant. In 2009, Todd Kohlhepp reviewed a Kawasaki motorcycle on Amazon, and to anyone reading casually, it looked like just another dissatisfied customer complaining about poor service at a motorcycle shop, the kind of angry review you see all over the internet. But every single word was actually a confession to quadruple murder that had been hiding in plain sight for 6 years. In November 2003, 4 people had been shot and killed at the Superbike Motorsports shop in Chesnee, South Carolina, including owner Scott Ponder, service manager Brian Lucas, mechanic Chris Sherbert, and customer Beverly Guy, all dead within minutes in one of the area's most notorious unsolved cases. The killer had been reviewing the motorcycle he rode to the crime scene on Amazon, and the review was public and visible to anyone searching for that motorcycle model, which means hundreds or possibly thousands of people read it, and some probably found it helpful when deciding whether to purchase that bike. Nobody connected it to 4 unsolved murders because why would they when it was just a product review mixed in with millions of others? He reviewed a folding shovel and praised its durability for various outdoor tasks, mentioning how useful it was for digging in different types of soil. And once you knew what he'd done, the meaning became obvious because he was talking about burying bodies. He reviewed a padlock and wrote about its usefulness for keeping unwanted visitors out of storage areas, describing how secure it was and how difficult it would be for someone to break free, which was essentially him describing the lock he would later use on the shipping container, where he'd hold his next victim captive. He reviewed a tactical flashlight and mentioned its brightness for nighttime activities, and investigators would later find similar flashlights on his property used during his crimes. Each review was carefully worded to avoid obvious red flags so that each one could be read as legitimate customer feedback. But taken together with full knowledge of his crimes, they formed a journal of murder, a confession written in code that wasn't really code at all, but just the mundane language of online shopping twisted into something sinister. For 13 years, nobody understood what they were reading because content moderation systems at companies like Amazon are designed to flag obvious violations like hate speech and explicit threats, not coded confessions hidden in product reviews. Since until this case, nobody imagined that was something they needed to look for. And while Kohlhepp was posting reviews and bragging about murder, he was still selling real estate and smiling at clients and closing deals, living two lives with no obvious signs or red flags to suggest he was hiding 7 bodies on his property. On August 31st, 2016, Kala Brown and her boyfriend Charles Carver were hired to do some cleaning work at a property in Woodruff, and it was supposed to be a simple job with easy money, the kind of gig where you're back home by evening. They never came home, and when Kala's mother reported them missing the next day, the couple had simply vanished with their car gone and their phones silent, leaving friends and family to check last known locations and find nothing. For 2 months, investigators searched and interviewed friends and family and tracked phone records and financial transactions, but the trail led absolutely nowhere. But someone knew exactly where they were because Todd Kohlhepp went about his business as usual, showing properties to clients and posting on social media and maintaining his professional image while nobody suspected that on his 95-acre property, hidden inside a metal shipping container among the trees, Kala Brown was chained to the wall. She'd been there since the day she and Charles arrived, forced to watch as Kohlhepp shot Charles in front of her before locking her in the container and chaining her by the neck to the wall in complete darkness where she would remain for 65 days. He brought food and water periodically, just enough to keep her alive, and threatened her repeatedly by telling her that if she tried to escape or made noise when he opened the container, he would kill her family. And the threat was credible because she'd already seen him kill once. She survived by staying quiet and not fighting back and hoping that somehow someone would find her. While during those 2 months, Kohlhepp continued his normal life and went to work and interacted with clients and smiled and shook hands and discussed property values while a woman was chained in a box on his land. On November 3rd, 2016, investigators received information that led them to Kohlhepp's property, and while the exact source of that tip remains unclear in public records, it was credible enough to obtain a search warrant. Officers arrived at the 95-acre site with no idea what they were about to find as they searched the heavily wooded and isolated property with buildings scattered across the land. And then they approached that large metal shipping container and heard something that would change everything, banging from inside. They cut the lock and opened the door, and the smell hit them first before they saw Kala Brown alive and chained to the wall after 65 days in captivity. When officers asked where Charles Carver was, she pointed to the ground because he was buried on the property along with others. And when investigators arrested Kohlhepp later that day, something unexpected happened because he confessed immediately, not just to Charles Carver's murder but to 6 others. He was almost eager to talk about it, as if he'd been waiting for this moment, waiting for someone to finally understand what he'd done. And that's when the full scope of his crimes began to emerge in ways that would horrify everyone involved. Kohlhepp led investigators to burial sites on his property, where 3 bodies were recovered, including Charles Carver and Johnny Joe Coxey and his girlfriend, Megan Lee McCraw Coxey, who had both been missing since late December 2015. After last being seen going to Kohlhepp's property, the pattern became clear as investigators realized he would lure people to his isolated property, kill them, bury them on the land, and then continue his normal life as if nothing had happened. But then he confessed to something that made investigators' blood run cold. The Superbike Motorsports murders from November 2003 had remained unsolved for 13 years as one of the area's most notorious cold cases, with detectives having pursued hundreds of leads while families spent 13 years without answers or closure or justice. The killer had been living openly in South Carolina the entire time, and Kohlhepp described walking into the motorcycle shop on November 6, 2003, and shooting the owner and 2 employees and a customer before leaving and returning to his normal life. His motive was poor customer service during a previous visit when he'd been angry about how he was treated while trying to return a motorcycle. So he'd walked in with a gun and killed 4 people over what amounted to a customer service dispute. The confession matched details that had never been released to the public, proving he knew things only the killer would know about the positions of bodies and the sequence of shots, and details about the scene that had been kept confidential for investigative purposes. Ballistics evidence from the scene matched weapons found on his property, and the case that had haunted Spartanburg County for 13 years was suddenly solved in a matter of hours. That's when investigators remembered the Amazon reviews and went back through his account with new context, realizing that the motorcycle review from 2009 had essentially described the superbike murders in a product review where he'd been bragging about it for 6 years. The psychological profile that emerged was deeply disturbing because Kohlhepp had compartmentalized his life completely, maintaining professional relationships with real estate clients while simultaneously holding a woman captive and posting reviews on Amazon while bodies were buried on his land. The isolation of his property had protected him for years, and if Calla Brown hadn't been found alive, if investigators hadn't obtained that search warrant, he might have continued indefinitely with his Amazon account remaining active and his reviews visible to the public, while the confession had been there all along, read by thousands of people who had no idea what they were reading. In May 2017, faced with overwhelming evidence and his own detailed confessions, Todd Kohlhepp accepted a plea agreement where he pleaded guilty to 7 counts of murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of sexual assault. The prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty in exchange for 7 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would die in prison with no chance of release or parole or freedom, while the plea agreement spared Calla Brown from having to testify about her 65 days in captivity and spared the victims' families from a lengthy trial that would drag their loved ones' murders through months of court proceedings. At the sentencing hearing, family members spoke about their losses, with Scott Ponder's mother describing 13 years of not knowing who killed her son, 13 years of sleepless nights and unanswered questions, and seeing her son's killer walk free while she mourned. Beverly Guy's family talked about the pain of an unsolved murder and how it never goes away, how every day without answers is another day of torture, while the families of Johnny Coxey and Megan McCraw Coxey described the anguish of their disappearance and the desperate hope that they'd be found alive, and the crushing reality when their bodies were discovered. Calla Brown attended the hearing but chose not to speak publicly because while her survival had been crucial to solving the case and her courage during captivity had kept her alive, and her information had led to finding the other victims, the trauma of what she endured was too profound for public display. Amazon removed Kohlhepp's reviews from their platform after his arrest and issued a brief statement acknowledging the situation, but they provided no explanation for how the reviews had remained public for so long, or why their content moderation systems had never flagged them, or any acknowledgement that a serial killer had used their platform to brag about murder for over a decade. The padlock review was gone, and the shovel review was gone, and the motorcycle shop review that had essentially confessed to quadruple murder was gone, all deleted as if removing them could somehow erase what had happened. But screenshots had already spread across the internet, with true crime forums analyzing every word and Reddit threads dissecting the hidden meanings. The question that haunted everyone was whether the murders could have been prevented if someone had recognized what the reviews really meant. And while the answer is probably no, that doesn't make the question any less disturbing. The Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office faced uncomfortable questions about whether they'd ever thought to search online for potential evidence during their 13-year investigation of the superbike murders. And the answer was no, because it simply wasn't a technique that investigators used at the time. The case prompted changes in how law enforcement approaches digital evidence, with social media posts and online reviews and digital footprints now being standard parts of criminal investigations. And training programs for detectives now include modules on digital forensics and online behavior analysis. But these changes came too late for Kohlhepp's victims. 7 families lost loved ones to Todd Kohlhepp's violence, with 4 people murdered in 2003 at the Superbike Motorsports shop and 3 more people killed between 2015 and 2016 on his property, while one survivor spent more than 2 months chained in darkness not knowing if she would live or die. Throughout it all, the killer was writing reviews on Amazon and hiding his confessions and product feedback, and bragging about his crimes to an audience that didn't know they were reading a serial killer's journal. And this forces us to confront something deeply uncomfortable about the digital age. We're surrounded by information and drowning in it, with social media posts and product reviews and comment sections and forum threads where millions of people share millions of thoughts every single day. And somewhere in that ocean of information, there are confessions we're not seeing, and cries for help we're not hearing, and warning signs we're not recognizing. Kohlhepp's Amazon reviews were public for years, and some people probably found them helpful when making purchasing decisions, which means some people probably clicked the helpful review button and unknowingly endorsed a serial killer's confession to murder. Without context, the reviews seemed innocuous as just normal customer feedback from someone sharing their opinions about products they'd purchased. But with context, every word becomes sinister, from the shovel review about digging in different types of soil to the padlock review about security and keeping people contained. The real lesson from this case isn't about spotting hidden confessions in online reviews, or being paranoid about every product review we read, or seeing hidden meanings in every online post, but rather about understanding that evil can hide anywhere and that predators adapt to new technologies faster than we develop ways to stop them. Kala Brown's rescue was the break that solved everything. Because if investigators hadn't received that tip, if they hadn't obtained that search warrant, if she hadn't survived those 65 days, then the truth might never have emerged, and the Superbike Motorsports murders might still be unsolved, and Johnny Coxey and Megan McCraw Coxey might still be listed as missing persons. Todd Kohlhepp might still be writing reviews on Amazon, and hiding his confessions in plain sight and continuing to sell real estate to unsuspecting clients, while bodies remained buried on his property. And that's the real horror of this case. Not the violence itself, but how long it remained hidden, and how easily evil disguised itself as ordinary life, and how a serial killer used the world's largest online retailer to brag about murder for over a decade, while 7 people died and 1 survivor will carry the trauma of 65 days in captivity for the rest of her life.